Welcome folks. Welcome to part 25 of Let's Play Donkey Kong Country 3. So guess what? We're going to be seeing some credits in the next episode. We beat the game in this particular episode. The final boss gets beaten in this episode, and we get past this nefarious stage. So we just walked through an enemy there, swam through an enemy there. We have the cheats on, the action replay. I think that's what it's called, action replay, one of those situations. But that's what it's called. We're going to get through this, and of course, like I said, I got pretty close last time. I got to like the last little segment that you have to be able to beat the stage, and I just wasn't able to quite do it. And this is kind of the concept. It was a royal pain. I just look after. I really kind of dislike that fragment, but it's just kind of the concept that, you know, I think if I had had save states or something like that, some sort of emulation to be able to do, I think I could have eventually done it. But the concept of having to beat the stage with the set amount of lives, there's just not enough concept, because you have to do most of the stage over. I think maybe even if this were on like the Super Nintendo Classic Edition, I could probably do it just like that, but it's just not. The fragments behind it just don't have the correct kind of situation for it. That's just kind of the thing. But I'll tell you, even if I had beaten this stage, I really sincerely doubt that I would have been able to beat the final boss. It seems like a lot of these Super Nintendo games are pretty manageable up until like the tail end of the game. That seems to be where they pull out all the stops. Like I've said this before, I think somewhere in this LP, but like I really almost didn't beat Donkey Kong Country 2. Like if I had died probably like another 4 or 5 or 6 more times fighting that final boss, I probably would have just not done it. I mean, I definitely wanted to beat that game, but it was not just like the way that it happened was just very much, you know, by the skin of the teeth. And I just think that's just kind of the concept. But this boss is tougher than last time, so they pull out the stops. Kind of happens to be the thing, and I was just like, screw it. So that was just kind of the situation. But yeah, so you'll see what happens here as we get through the vast majority of this. This is the last little segment. This is the only thing left I had to do, but you know, just it's a configured kind of control. I think I could have figured it out enough if I had done it through emulation, like I was saying, but it's just kind of just didn't like the concept. And even this last part's kind of tricky, just because you have to jump out of the water and then go in the opposite kind of way. So it recalibrates your controls. Luckily they don't throw an enemy right there or something. But yeah, I was just like, fuck that stage, homie. That stage can completely go to hell as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, so I definitely am going to save just to make sure we don't have to do that again. And this is just kind of the concept, so it's time to move on to the final stage of the game. This is going to take the vast majority of the rest of this episode. Probably the next 8 minutes are just going to be about this boss and stuff, so I just would have to say it kind of happens to be a thing. But yeah, it's just been, I have plans for the next few LPs that are going to happen. I've kind of got some bonus plans. There's some extra stuff that's going to wind up happening around these parts. It just boils down to whether or not I can beat the game. I mean, luckily I was able to beat Popeye, but this game has just really been a royal pain in the ass. And that just really happens to be the thing about it. I was just not expecting like the difficulty. When I set out on this game back in early mid 2022, I thought it was going to be maybe not so much a cakewalk, but I just didn't expect so many levels and bosses in this particular game to really just be that teeth gnashingly hard. And that's just kind of the concept. This is pretty much the toughest of the 3 Donkey Kong Country games, and it's just apparent. Like even this initial fight, just in this beginning segment here, is just virtually kind of like something you probably want to have cheats for. Now obviously it is doable, but it's just kind of the concept that it just requires a tougher kind of conscript about it, and that's just kind of the main thing. Like just dodging some of this, you don't get the Kong barrel, so you just have to keep in mind, you don't really, at least it doesn't appear that you really get the Donkey Kong barrels. I think you have to pretty much one-shot this, which is different from how most of this game kind of turns out. And it's just not something that's that kind of like affable in a lot of ways. There is like some cinematics here. You do get like a decent little script as far as that kind of goes, which I do like. I like the concept of that just because most of these Donkey Kong games just didn't have like the speaking, apart from talking to like the other monkeys like Cranky and some of them. But I just would have to say, yeah, this is kind of the situation. Oh, I guess you do get a Kong barrel, so that's pretty interesting. I'm glad that they do that, because it just would have seemed like maybe it would have been a little bit more tougher than it needed to be. But yeah, we do beat this guy in this episode, folks. This is kind of the situation. It's kind of a lengthy fight, and it probably would have taken a lot longer. I almost thought If I was for certain that my save file wouldn't have gotten deleted, I probably would have actually attempted this boss without cheats just to see if I could have done it. But I think the likelihood is we just would have strung this out a lot more, and it just probably would have resulted in like another 2, 3, maybe even 4 episodes of me just fighting this boss and losing. I just probably would have gotten pissed off, and it just felt unnecessary. So it's just like, let's just beat this game already. It's been since early 2022. I was a full 2 calendar years younger when I set off on this game, so it's just kind of time for that. I think everyone's kind of just like exasperated, like, damn, just beat this effing game already, that's kind of thing. So we'll get started with it, and that's kind of the concept. But yeah, you can get electrocuted here, and you obviously don't want to jump into the boss, but I'm just kind of underneath the impression that like I would have gotten hit just right there. So but yeah, you basically have to drop the barrel on him, and that's the only real way to do it. You have to mess with his propellers. So it's persnickety timing. It just took me a moment to kind of figure out what to do. I kind of forgot about this. I guess you could throw it at him too, so that's another good thing about it. But yeah, I mean, later on, it's about the barrel falling on him. You really have to have some good time. That's why I kind of said I just preferred to use cheats. But so yeah, it's just things have been low key. It's just kind of the concept. Kind of taking a break from the news, not much going on, the heat, stuff like that, just kind of things going about, Same situations for the most part. But yeah, now some more stuff is going to happen here, so this is where things start to get a lot more tricky and such. I mean, this is a pretty distinct boss fight. I definitely think that this kind of stands off the page. This is probably one of the more, like, defining boss fights for the Super Nintendo, I would say, just some of these ones. Like, I felt like maybe the Sarlacc fight from Blackthorn is a nice one, even though that one's pretty tough. I feel like there's just some good ones. The Super Mario World one, that final fight's a pretty good one. It's just interesting to kind of get some of those when you think about them that just kind of have some meaning towards it, just a little bit more degree behind it. Where I feel like this one actually might be more distinct than the one in Donkey Kong Country 2. Now, the first Donkey Kong Country had a pretty distinct fight. That one being on the pirate ship and stuff, that one jumped off the page. But this one, it has like a certain kind of appeal towards it, but it's kind of the thing. Yeah, this is it, folks. So you should definitely, I would say, watching all 25 of these episodes, you should have easily had a good assortment of pizzas. If you're watching this across like 4, 5, 6 days or something, you watch like 3 or 4 of these a day, or 5 or 6 of these a day or something. And even if you power through it, even if you watch this whole playthrough in the playlist from episode 1, I would have to say, I mean, hats off to that, just in terms of that concept. Just definitely kick back and enjoy it. It's a good one just to start on like that first beer in episode 1 and be feeling good by the end of it. Just maybe you go out, maybe you call a buddy and go out to the nightclub after that and have a good time. So it's kind of the concept. I mean, I estimate that this particular playthrough is probably only about like 3 hours or something like that, if that. I'd say probably just a good 3-hour run of just some good atmosphere to kind of have. So, but look at how threatening that this boss fight becomes. I think even if I had ducked there, I might have gotten hit. I'm not really sure. I mean, at least would have been questionable. This really starts getting a lot tougher, and eventually you just have to drop the barrels on them. Yeah, that's pretty much it, folks. So yeah, the next episode will just be the credits, and then that takes care of it. And then you have your playthrough, folks. This is kind of the situation. So yeah, Super Mario World is going to resume. That's probably what's going to happen. I've got another bonus project that's going to happen. There's some more good stuff that's on the way. And I have another project that's going to happen kind of to coincide with Super Mario World. So there's going to be another one that's going to replace this one. There's actually another Super Nintendo game I can beat, which I'm proud of. So if you mess up on the lever, you have to go to the other one. Of course, you can get hit, but you do have to basically make sure it falls on him, which is kind of the concept. So it's all about timing here. This is it. You have to be really... Maybe you don't. Maybe you just have to throw the barrel. Here I was thinking you had to make the barrel land on his head. Then I think you might even have to have further timing by hitting him and making sure he gets electrocuted too. Kind of the situation, but yeah, I think one more hit. Yeah, that's about 8 or 9 hits here, folks. It's tougher than last time, I would have to say. Yeah, took care of it. That's, I mean, believe it or not, that's not the actual final boss. I mean, I know, obviously you can tell just because it's not 103%, but if you actually manage to beat this game 103%, yeah, if you actually manage to beat this game 103%, I would definitely say, for one thing, hats off. But for another, the stages get tougher. There's 5 or 6 extra stages in the game that you have to do, and then there's another final boss, just like in Donkey Kong Country 2. Now, at least the Donkey Kong Country 2 absolute final boss is a lot more manageable, but I just would have to say, in this game, I actually haven't done it. I did not ever beat Donkey Kong Country 3 103%, so that's kind of the concept about it. I question it. Yeah, I mean, you can see it up on YouTube, but it just looks like a nightmare. I would have to say it's not worth it. I mean, it's probably worth it for folks just for the gusto of doing it, but you just would have to say it's like, eh. So, but that takes care of it, folks. I'll see you in the credits, and then that should about wrap things up here. So subscribe for more fun. Thanks for watching, and of course, have a wonderful night.